Professor Wiseguy here in a confessional mode. You know, I'm not always the fabulously wonderful person whom I portray in these videos. Sometimes I'm actually kind of a jerk. Let me explain. Recently, in the middle of the summer and the waning, we hope, days of our national COVID adventure, I discovered that a colleague was presenting a talk in the middle of the day over Zoom. Now, there were already several things that seemed destined to make her audience small. Summer, middle of the day, Zoom. Then there was the subject matter. She was delivering a presentation titled Young Bengal and the Brahmo Samaj. What? Are you drawn in yet? Here's a part of the description. This virtual presentation will focus on a second wave of babus called Young Bengal Babus, who were well versed in Western thought and agitated for social, cultural, and religious change within Orthodox Bengali society. It will also look at the emergence of the Brahmo Samaj, a reformist movement stemming from Hinduism, which is influenced by the free-thinking Young Bengal Babus. I assure you I am not making this stuff up. Like so many academic presentations, this one would mean a great deal to a very small group of people, leaving the rest of us scratching our heads. To be clear, I'm not being critical. If you happen to want to know about the Brahmo Samaj, this is dynamite stuff. But if you're an American literature and composition teacher, not so much. Suddenly, I found myself conflicted. I genuinely like this colleague and I want to be supportive of everybody on our faculty, at least in my own department. Heaving a hefty sigh, I decided to dedicate an hour of my life and log in for this Zoom meeting. Meanwhile, Bo the Wonder Poodle was unexcited. Now here's where the confession comes in. As I got ready to join the meeting, it occurred to me that it would be polite to mute my audio once my colleague got started. Then I remembered that a lot of people turn off their video as well if it's a one-person presentation. I could check in, greet a few people who were also online, and then, once my colleague started, mute both sound and video. Once that was accomplished, I could leave the meeting running and do whatever I wanted to do. I could catch up on grading, email long-lost cousins, or even play obscure video games. I didn't have to stay at my computer. I didn't even have to stay in the house. I wasn't going to go that far. So, to my colleague, even though you never knew I was thinking these sneaky thoughts, I'm sorry. When the lecture began, there were about 15 of us online, and even as I muted sight and sound on my end, I did stay mentally tuned in. I listened to what she said and looked at her slides. It mentioned in the title the Bengal Renaissance. I didn't even know they had a Renaissance, or I would have at least sent a card. In fact, I realized that I didn't know what a Bengal was, aside from a type of tiger or a Cincinnati football team. I knew there was a language called Bengali, and I had always assumed that it was somehow related to the nation of Bangladesh. But only from this presentation did I realize that there are Bengali people in Bangladesh and in India. In fact, there's a region of India called West Bengal. Who knew? Okay, a lot of people knew. As my colleague went on, she noted that these people were mostly active in and around Calcutta. Do you know where Calcutta is? I knew it was a big city in India. I knew that Mother Teresa had been headquartered there, but I couldn't have found it on a map. So while the lecture was continuing, I pulled up that marvel known as Google Maps and found Calcutta. There it is. Meanwhile, Bo remained unimpressed. My colleague went on with her presentation and noted that this group, the Brahmo Samaj, was critical of the Indian caste system. Now, I already knew that India had these castes or classes of people. My colleague mentioned Brahmins. I'd heard them. What I didn't know was that there are apparently two flavors of Brahmin. If I understood correctly, these would be the people in high society who get invited to the big party versus those who get invited to the smaller party. Of course, I don't get invited to any parties, that's a totally different matter. It occurred to me that even though I knew that India had a caste system, I had no idea how many castes there are or what they actually represent. I looked that up while listening to the continuing presentation. It went on like that. In the course of an hour, a supposedly wasted hour in which I was just being a decent friend and showing my support for a colleague, Bo never moved. During that hour, I learned a number of things, but more importantly, I was prompted to continue tracking down even more things. I have a list of questions that I want to pose to my colleague. Once we're back on campus, I intend to plop myself down in her office and invite her to fill me in on several curiosities. Through all of this, you might be saying, wow, what a boring life you live. Will any of that stuff be useful to you? The answer is, I don't know. Will knowing where Calcutta is on a map improve my life? I suppose it could come up on trivia night, but really, how will it be useful? I don't know, but that doesn't matter. Meanwhile, the Bo abides. Hey, why do I keep showing you shots of my poodle? Is that just another example of my dull and desperate life? Maybe, but maybe not. What is the difference between me and my dog? Okay, there are lots of differences between me and Bo, but the one I want to focus on today is the matter of curiosity. You see, Bo is not a terribly curious animal. He does a lot of sniffing, often of awkward parts of another dog's anatomy. That's about the limit of his curiosity. Bo will go to bed tonight, probably knowing pretty much exactly the same things that he knew when he woke up this morning. Hopefully, my curiosity will have led me to have more knowledge at my disposal when I go to bed tonight than when I woke up. I suppose that'll give me raw materials for even weirder dreams. I don't know. Curiosity can be a powerful thing. I'd argue that it's one of the things that makes life worth living. I know people who get to a certain point in their lives and sort of turn off the curiosity system in their minds. This happens to some old people who don't want to learn anything. Instead, they watch TV shows from the 1960s and wonder why nobody subscribes to the newspaper anymore. But this isn't just an old people thing. I've seen college professors who, shortly after finishing graduate school and getting a decent job, set about teaching the same old courses in the same old way for years, even decades on end. In reality, there are people who have their curiosity systems burn out when they're still in their teens. They'll spend the remaining years of their lives working jobs that grow progressively more dull, eating food that gets increasingly more tedious, and otherwise doing the human version of Bo laying on the floor asleep. How sad is it to be living through decades of your life with your curiosity system broken? Now, let me be clear that young Bengal and the Brahmo Samaj did not change my life. I guess technically it changed my life, since everything we do or don't do changes our lives in some tiny way. But that presentation was not something that I'll look back on, ages and ages hence, as a great watershed of my development. By the same token, you might find yourself in a training course or a college classroom that you realize is not going to be one of the hugely formative aspects of your life. That's okay. Time and experience never need to be wasted as long as our curiosity system remains functional. When it's active, we'll find ourselves drawn away from watching The Office for the 94th time and towards something more challenging. We have a reason to get out of bed in the morning and a sense of accomplishment when we turn in at night. We are far less likely to say, "There's nothing to do." And instead, we'll struggle with the many possible things we could do. Or we could lay on the floor like Bo. Do you have a boring experience that your curiosity turned into something worthwhile? Share it in the comments. Beyond that, if you found this video less than boring, consider doing all the nice stuff that we like to do to videos. But for now, get out of here.